Thanks, Daniela. Thank you for having us at the conference, and we always look forward to sharing with you guys and those who come. It's going to be this is a new normal, apparently, so we're just going to lean into it and see where it goes. I have with me today Kathy, who has done a tremendous amount of work in helping to put this together. I'm trying to drag her into presenting, but she's not quite there yet. She may jump on while we're doing this, but Kathy, thank you so much for all your help and being here today. And next slide. Yeah, so today's takeaway, we're going to look at defining microaggressions in as simple as we can. We will not dig deep into it in terms of how do you identify one, because I think we can go all over the place and many people have different ways. It's usually one of those things that we have a zillion different interpretations of how to identify it. And because of how it is, it's really hard to settle on this is how you identify a microaggression. So we won't be getting into that much today. Then we're going to go into some examples of microaggressions. And this is where I really want you guys to participate and to help us out in the chat box when we ask you questions or when the slides do show up. Then we're going to get into what's the impact of microaggressions. And lastly, we're going to talk about how do you respond to microaggressions. And at the end of the slide deck, there is a little tool that we borrowed from somebody else that I think was really cute, and we have not changed anything on it. That kind of helps with the responding to microaggressions. That tool could be a very nice training for your staff or for you to have conversations with those you work with. Next. So have you ever felt like you had to defend your entire race or entire ethnicity? Like, you know, if you are Black, you stand for every Black person. Or you had to prove that your sexual orientation really doesn't define everything about you, it's just what it is. Or you had to defend your expertise, especially when you're a woman. Very often as a woman, I've had to defend my expertise. I've given up on that now. Then you probably have experienced some form of microaggression. Next slide. So I just want to spend some time to look on this. Just talk about experiences. So on my left, probably your right, you have those three individuals, and there's a woman in the middle between two men, and she's trying to give some input. Would you consider not interrupting me anymore? She wanted to talk about some ideas that you would want to consider if you're doing, like, say, a cost analysis. And no one paid her any attention till so somebody else, a male, had a suggestion. So I looked at the cost, and I think the retool is a very wise move to do financially. And he was rewarded with very good work, Jim. I'm not sure how many of you have been in situations like that. It could be where it has happened to me several times, where I'm at a meeting or in a group setting, I'm the only woman, and I share my idea or give what I thought was a great suggestion, and it was passed over. And then someone else, usually of the opposite sex or of the minority, of the majority culture, European American person, and right away the idea that they gave was applauded, and great job, what a good idea. Let's put it into place. Let's do that. Let's use it. And of course, you feel defeated, and after so many times of experiencing that, it can really play a toll on you. Next slide. So what are microaggressions? They are very subtle, and they reflect, it's like a structural form of oppression, which is specific towards a specific group of individuals who are usually underserved, underrepresented, and considered to be a minority. And we have minority in quotes because it's how we define it. They are insults. And these insults are usually unintentional, but that is the very reason why they cause us harm, because sometimes people are quite unaware of the impact of the insult and what it means to others. So Jean Harvey defines microaggression, I love this, as a civilized oppression. So being civilized, it's when the violence is not overt nor clear to victims or perpetrators or bystanders, and thus is particularly harmful because the actual impact of harm is obscure. Because it's so subtle, it's often ignored and dismissed. And that's why, going back to what I said earlier, it's very hard to prove, to say, this is what the microaggression is, and this is what it is. It's, if you've done any work in implicit bias, it comes from that same body of work and those same feelings. Next. What are types of microaggressions? So Daryl Wing Su, he's I think he's a professor at Columbia now, or something like that. And he's the one who coined the words, and he's done a lot of work on microaggressions. Others have picked it up, but he, I think, was the original person whose research led to that. So there are three types of microaggression. You have microassault. It's when something is intentionally done to a person, and usually the person says, well, I was just joking. You know, like somebody says something that's very derogatory, and if you should ask the person or question about it, usually the response is, I'm not joking. That's a microassault. The thing is done intentionally. Microinsults is a comment or action that is unintentionally discriminatory. Example, this could be someone saying to an Indian doctor, your people must be proud of you. I'm sure many of us have heard it as women, as people of color. I'm sure even as European Americans, you may hear phrases like that do relate to you. And micro-invalidation is when a person's comment invalidates or undermines the experiences of a certain group of people. So we have, like racism does not exist. We hear that so very often, especially in this day and age. People are struggling with, is this racist? Does racism really exist? And aren't we all one human race? Next slide. So some examples of microaggression, and this is when we want you to raise your hands or enter the chat box. What message would you be receiving if you're asked these questions and surround the theme of an alien in one's own land? So where are you from? Where were you born? You speak English really good. When I can't read the other one, it's blocked with the pictures. We may want to take the pictures out because I can't see the entire screen.
So it says, when a person asks someone to teach them words in their native language.
In their native language. So those are some of the examples. If you hear those words, what message do you think is being sent to you? Do we have any responders in the chat?
Oh, it says you don't belong.
Yes. Anyone else?
We have another one, not one of us. You're different, uneducated. You're from somewhere else.
Yes. And you
did so well to be like us.
Oh my gosh, yes. That is
wow,
so true.
You're not one of us.
True. Yeah. They're all so true. That is so true. And you spend more time focusing sometimes we spend more time trying to prove that we belong, that whatever is happening around us that we should be paying attention to, we don't. So we're kind of just lost in that when we have to prove that. Next slide. Next slide, Kathy. So this is a good one. Assign intelligence to a person of color based on their race. You are so articulate. Well, I rarely get that one, but I hear people say it a lot. You are a credit to your race. You speak such good English. And that other one is?
It just received. It was just
okay, the message received. Okay. So what's the message received? You are so articulate. You are a credit to your race. You speak such good English. What do you feel? What do you hear when someone says that to you?
So we've got, I'm surprised by your intelligence.
Yes, yes.
You're the exception to those around you, being underestimated despite your race.
Yeah, those are great. It's all, you're not expected to be articulate. You're not expected to speak well. You're not expected to be articulate. So people are focusing on, oh my gosh, you're so articulate that they miss the message you're trying to deliver. Oh yes, I like that one. I think less of you because of your race. But we're gonna give you a little crumb to make you feel good because you are articulate or you speak such good English. Next slide, please. So here's some other examples. When I look at you, I don't see color. That one hurts me a lot when I hear that. America is a melting pot. There's only one race, the human race. So what's the message that you get from that? And I say, when I look at you, I don't see color. That one is very harmful for folks. And it's extremely harmful when you are going for services.
So we have get over it. Your color is not important. Your race, culture, heritage does not matter. You ignore reality. People think less of you because of your race, that the history and culture of the said race, gender, ethnicity is not important.
Yes, yes. So can you imagine when we're saying to folks that, you know, when you're delivering services or you're engaging with your colleagues, you need to think of who they are. You need to think of their race, you need to think of their ethnicity, especially in services and mental health services, behavioral health services. For example, we want services to be modified and adapted to meet the needs of individuals. And if someone doesn't see you and they don't see color and they don't see your race, then how then can those services be modified and adapted to suit your needs? So if you look on some of our data, that could be one of the reasons why our data is skewed. Could be one of the reasons why when we look on the data coming out of COVID-19, on the disparities, especially for people of color, who are having really disproportionate effect on them and to their outcomes and to the numbers of individuals who are dying. So if I don't see you, then I'll just, yeah, you could take it anyway. I don't see your color, but also sometimes if I don't see you, I could see a block of wood, I could see a chair, I could see something else. And as such, I don't even have to treat you as human. And it's very dangerous. This color blindness thing is huge. It has a huge impact on how services are delivered and the outcome of those services. Next slide.
Lenore, there's a good one that says, ignoring that you're actually part of a minority.
Yes, yes, that's a great one. Yeah, you are nobody. You're not. You don't exist. You really don't exist. And when I've had friends or acquaintances say, "Oh, no, but I don't see color," and I won't even respond. I just get up and walk away. I said, it just takes too much energy. After you've known me for how many years, it takes too much energy to even respond to that. I just walk away. Next slide. Yeah, a white man or woman clutching their purse or checking their wallet as a person of color approaches or passes. A store owner following a customer of color around the store. A white person doing something, staying out of the elevator when someone else when a person of color gets in the elevator. Yeah, what message do you receive with that one? Yes, scary.
People of color are scary. Stay away
Yes,
from
stay away
me.
from me. Don't steal
I'm
my.
afraid of you because of your race.
Yes. I don't see. I hope you change that today. That you see color after this. You might hurt me. That's so true. Um, you know, even we take it to countries, and you know, people say, you know, if you live in a certain part of suburbs, then you don't have to, and you begin to have definitions of people sometimes in general, depending on where they live and who they are, and people begin to respond very negatively towards you. Yes, anyone of color is dangerous, so we cross the road. And you know what's also interesting? You have people of color who do the same thing to other people of color. So that's a whole different conversation. So it's not just European Americans that do that to people of color. You have people of color who will absorb or internalize those behaviors and begin to act accordingly just because. You know, some people say the person looks dirty or they look scary. I've seen both ends where this is, oh, I'm not going to go on the elevator, I'm going to wait. And you're wondering, why are you waiting? You have internalized all those feelings that people have portrayed onto you, and now you're acting them out. Next slide, please. So I'm not a racist. I have several Black friends. I may even, and my sister may be married to one as well, or my brother may be married to one, or I went to school with that one. Yes, Jonathan, that's so common. As a woman, I know what you go through as a racial minority. You know, walk in my shoe, get the color of my skin on your skin. I am gay. I also experience oppression. We are the same. We're not the same. I am not privileged. I receive no handouts to achieve what I have. And I know some of these are hard. They're harsh. And it makes when you use them, or when people say that and you defend it, it makes it seem as if you have no heart. Especially it says I'm privileged, I receive no handouts to achieve what I have. And that may be true. And we're not saying that you're not financially that you're financially privileged. You may be and you may not be. But very often what privilege means that the very color of a European American skin advances them beyond those people of color. Just that you have no control over. And that's what makes it so difficult for all of us. I'm not a racist. I have several Black friends. You know, do. As a woman, I know what you go through as a racial minority. I don't know that. Sorry, because when you know what people fail to understand sometimes is that as women, when a woman of color walks into the door and a woman of European American descent walks into the door, they're two different feelings. People respond to them differently. Anything you want to share from the chat, Kathy or Daniela?
It said, I am married to an Asian and African man. We get looks at all the time, especially since I outed us in my poetry that we are straight transgender.
Yes.
And then intersectionality, no one experiences is the same for anyone. Everyone experiences oppression in different ways. That would be like saying I have depression and you have depression, so I know exactly what you're going through. When
that's a really good analogy. Yeah, that's really a good analogy.
They said COVID should have thrown out the handout one completely, but it hasn't because it kicked us all down to the floor.
Yep, it kicked us down to the floor, some more than others. I think, I've done this work for years, and I've spoken with leaders, with technicians, folks who are analyzing data, folks who are providing services, folks who are funding services. And until COVID, it was so hard to say to folks, their disparities are real, they are alive. And when the first data came out, I remember, I was home, I've been home for a while, and the first data came out on a state that had, I think it was like 14% Blacks, but it was, the rate of infection was like 70% among Blacks. And my friend called me and says, oh my gosh, this is what you've been trying to say for years. So for me, the question would have been to most people, what else did we have to tell you? What else should we have shared? So you could begin to look on what are some of the conditions and why it is happening this way now. So it's something for you guys on the call, those who are technicians, those who are leaders, those who are supervisors who deliver services. It's something you may want to begin to, and I'm talking to people of color and I'm talking to European Americans. I'm not exempting anyone from this conversation, that we all need to dig deep. We need to look outside of the box. We need to really seriously begin to think, what can we do differently? And what are our contributions to the outcomes that people get in services? And if you have heard me present, I think I say this every year and every time I present, that when you look on the data, the outcome, the data, the outcome what we analyze from the data, it's as a result of the services that we provide. It's not about anybody else, it's about us. Next slide, please.
It was just one more comment was, I have heard this one. Well, affirmative action already picked you guys up.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. I guess some of us are waiting to be picked up. So when you quite don't understand, what it means, because I'm not sure I can add much more to that than say wow.
The next.
This other one, I believe the most qualified person should get the job. Everyone can succeed in the society if they work hard enough. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And what's that last one, Kathy?
And the last one is, I am not privileged. I receive no handouts to achieve what I have.
Right. So what do folks think about this? I believe the most qualified person should get the job. Everyone can succeed in this society if they work hard enough. Pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, and that I have not received any privileges. What do people think? If only it was true, I know. I know. I think it's very hard for folks to accept that their privilege had anything to do, or the color of their skin have anything to do with where they are or what they have achieved in life. Oh yes, just don't do anything wrong or the police won't bother you. Do we need to say that? I've seen so many people get hit down with that one. That's exactly why we had the American Disabilities Act. That's one of the reasons why we had that. And even although we have that as a law, how many times do people actually follow it or work within the guidelines of the law? It's really hard for us as individuals to give people the treatment that they deserve. It sounds harsh, and a lot of times we think we're doing it, but we don't. And smiling and hugging and kissing, that's not it. That really isn't it. Wow. You think with everything else, that's what those comments, you wouldn't hear those comments anymore, but I just think they're getting worse. I believe anything of the most qualified person should get the job. I just don't think, I don't know, even when people believe that, it doesn't happen. So if you believe that, and that's what your belief, then let it happen, because very often I've seen and I've known where people who are more qualified, people of color are more qualified than European Americans, and they do not get the job. Yeah, I don't know why it's easier for women. I don't find it any easier. I find it harder. And if you work hard, you can, you know, you can succeed. Yeah, I know the men say that. Like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I remember a friend of mine, I'm from Jamaica, and my friend is from Guyana. And we had a full blowout argument. Other people with us thought we were gonna fight, because he really believes that if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, then at that time, I must say at that time, he no longer believes that if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you can succeed. And when things began to fall apart for him, it didn't matter how many times he pulled himself up, the bootstraps broke. He was pulling himself so harsh that now they were no longer bootstraps. He used to pull himself up. When that kind of hit him in the face, he began to say, oh my gosh, it took him a lot. And it took him a lot to the point that he had a mental health breakdown, because he tried, he worked hard and harder and harder and longer hours, and it wasn't working out. And after he went through the mental health breakdown and began to get help, he began to realize it really doesn't matter. That statement doesn't work for all of us. It doesn't matter how hard you pull yourself up. A lot of times you really don't get the outcomes that you think you should get, or the outcomes that you see others getting. Next slide. $3.14. Asking a Black person, why do you have to be so loud and animated? That's me. Why are you so quiet? We want to know what you think. Be more verbal. Come on, speak up some more. We want to hear you. Why are you so emotional? Relax, it will be okay. And to non-native English-speaking person, you have a very heavy accent. Slowly. You're speaking very slowly, because somewhere, somehow, that's going to make it better. And dismiss an individual who
brings up race and culture in work settings.
In work settings. So I'm sure, I know I've been many times. I've gotten recently, a long time ago, it doesn't go away from me. Why do you act so loud and you're so animated? Calm down. I am an animated human being, and I tend to have my hands, my voice, and everything kind of go along with who I am as a person. And if it happens for every Black person, I know it happens for me. And I know, you know, I've heard it, these things of others, Asian and Latino individuals. So what message do you receive for that?
It says, I've been told by college I don't like it loud.
Oh, wow.
And we have lost all my children to child services for mental health.
Wow. Because you're loud, or because of one of those? You know, I think that, you know, and that's why we cannot ignore, we can't ignore these things, because it impacts us so seriously. It really impacts our lives and impact the outcomes of ourselves and our children and our families. And people tend to respond to us because of their own interpretations of who we are. And like, you know, for if you're mentally ill, the stigma for someone who experiences mental illness, that's another way how people, the microaggression that goes along with that. We see it in the form of stigma. Yeah, it's very brutal. Okay, next slide. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a hearing impairment. Would me asking someone to speak up or speak more clearly be a microaggression? I need to hear people very clearly.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily microaggression. I think very often it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So, by just saying, I'm having a hard time hearing what you're saying, can you speak up a little louder? That's much better than, oh, will you speak up? Will you speak up more in an annoying way? So a lot of times it's not what you say, it's literally how it is said. And then you have a chance to separate the process or separate what's happening from the person. When you attack the person, it makes it so much more challenging, and people see it more as an attack, and then they get very defensive. Yeah, I think it's very easy for folks to knock us down and celebrate who we are. Another example, you people, referring to people of color as undesirables. People of color mistaken for a service worker, having a taxi cab pass a person of color and pick up another, a European American person, television shows and movies that feature predominantly European American folks, and people of color being divided.
Diminished in work conversations when a white person repeats the same comment said by the person of color, they are acknowledged and respected for their contribution.
Yes, that happens. That happens a lot. And there are ways to address that. Very, can be very overt in addressing it. And sometimes depending on how the person is, they'll say, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I was on an airplane once. It wasn't full. It was one of the smaller planes, and it wasn't full. And the air stewardess says, please sit wherever you want to sit because we have a lot of space. So 2 women of color moved up to the front, and they sat on the opposite side so they could have, more room to spread out, and also have could speak to each other clearly. Another 2 white European American men came in the plane, and the woman asked the 2 women of color, could they move to the back, and gave the seats to the 2 European American men. And I'm sitting in my seat stewing, and it's like waiting. I gotta say something. Do I say something? Do I ignore it? Do I just go along? But one of the women of color spoke up and asked her if she realized what she did. And she defended the action I just want to give you guys more space so you could have more privacy in your conversation, and went on and on and on. But, and I know the woman just eventually just gave up because she couldn't prove or could not get the airline attendant to actually see the point that she was saying. But those things happen. And like we said earlier, it's very subtle. And when you try to address it, then, you could get retaliation, or people could, they could act very indifferently towards you. And being mistaken for a service worker, that happens a lot. I don't know, for you guys in New York City, do you have like the same trouble? Like in the past, when I've been before Uber came in, when I was in New York City, it would be hard for a yellow cab to stop and pick me up. Till I ended up for years using just one person. So I ended up meeting someone, and what I did was, whenever I come to New York City, I would call the person saying, this is when I'm coming in and this is when I'm leaving. Please pick me up, take me to where I'm going, and come for me and take me back to the airport. I don't know if yellow cabs are doing some of that or as much as they used to do now that we have Uber, because the competition is there. So I can imagine that anybody who stands out and put their hand up, then a yellow cab may stop. And that's happening. And I think I'm seeing a more people of color represented on the television and in movies. I think that's changing quite a bit. People are more conscious of that. So, they've been putting folks more, people of color in roles or things like that. Any chat?
Oh, yes. There was one that said, my complaint to my boss about waiting. Oops. My complaint about my boss waiting so long to get in the hospital unit was addressed as not important, as opposed to my white, as a clinical male colleague making the same complaint and being heard by all execs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. And I tell you, it's hard to prove. I started reading the other one, Kathy, but it came off the street about her,
Yeah.
somebody's husband, something.
Yep, it was, my husband was assaulted in, African American woman assaulted him. He never blamed it on her race, but he looks Chinese, so all races need to learn all about all races and acceptance and embracing all cultures, races, religions, all humans. Everyone deserves a better life than what's going on and being uncovered these days. I mean, African American neighborhood.
Yes, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply to a lot of us. I mean, and that's the thing with microaggression. You can get away, you can get around, and it may not be because of his race, why he was assaulted. It may not be, but how do you prove that? Because very often it is when you begin to dig deep. And that's why when those things happen and you can address it, you need to address it. And the tool that we have at the end of the slide give you some examples of how you can ask a question and generate a conversation so you can have one more of understanding, and you can understand the person who is being accused of being microaggressive. They can understand and give them a way to pause and think about what the behavior is and what it means. Because very often I say to folks, go to the data, especially in the workplace and in services. Look on the data. When you're saying to me, I love all my patients, then tell me, why is it that your patients of color are not being successful? What is going on there? So there's something that's going on there. Why, as much as I love them and they are embracing me, and you invite them to your parties or whatever, their outcomes are significantly different and not in a positive way. So an environmental theme, a college or university with buildings that are all names after white heterosexual upper class males. That's good. Metal detectors in public schools in communities of color. That's reality. Television shows and movies that feature predominantly white people without representation of that. The overabundance of liquor stores in communities of color. That's huge. And now we have not just liquor stores, we have pawn shops, and we have all undesirables. And you really have to think about it. Why is it so? You drive from in Rochester, where I live, you drive from one neighborhood to the next and you can see the huge difference. In some neighborhoods, you don't even have a billboard up. There isn't even a billboard. And yet in other neighborhoods, every few steps, you have a billboard with cigarettes, with alcohol. You have the pawn shops every few yards from each other. Why is that so? And yeah, food desert, I mean, that's real. So when you're providing treatment to individuals and we're telling them you want them to eat healthy, like this morning I had a doctor's appointment, one of my doctor's appointments this morning, and the doctor was saying, Linda, I hope you're eating healthy and hope you're doing so and so. And we've gotten to be very good friends. And I said, probably the question you should ask me, can I eat healthy? Do I have the wherewithal to do that? Do I have access to healthy food, and can I afford it? And she laughed. She says, for my next patient, I definitely will do that. So in a very cordial way, I was able to say to her, yes, I can afford to eat healthy, but is that the question that you should be asking your patients? Okay, next slide, please.
And I'm gonna.
Yes, so now we, here is Dr. Gerald Sue, and he's the guy who really, like I said earlier, has coined the word. It's a lot of research, and this is something that Kathy found that we thought would be so appropriate to kind of tie things together and some of what we just went through. It's a short YouTube. It's about 5-7 minutes. So please.
Tonight, we bring you another conversation in our series, Race Matters Solutions, during a week when racial tensions on campus have led to protests and high-profile resignations. Special correspondent Charlene Hunter-Gault sat down with Columbia University Teachers College professor Daryl Sue to learn more about the small slights that some say are more insidious than the overt racial tensions that could be seen and observed by all. Here's that conversation.
Professor Sue, thank you for joining us. So tell me just what exactly is microaggression?
Well, microaggressions are varying from being conscious, deliberate on a continuum to being outside one's level of awareness and unintentional. Microaggressions really are reflections of worldviews of inclusion, exclusion, superiority, inferiority, and they come out in ways that are outside the level of conscious awareness of an individual. When I'm asked, where were you born? And I say I was born in Portland, Oregon, and they persist by saying, no, where were you really born? And I'll say, Portland, Oregon? And they'll say, no, what country were you born in? And I'll say, the United States. They get very embarrassed. Now, this is an example that they are intending to make a personal connection, but the hidden communication, the true worldview, is that I am a perpetual alien or foreigner in my country. I am not a true American because true Americans only look the following way. And that's what generates these behaviors that are microaggressions.
But you describe it as unintentional, and yet we've seen at the University of Missouri very blatant examples of racism.
You're right about that. Microaggressions vary from being conscious, deliberate, intentional, from old-fashioned racism and bias statements to the unintended consequences. And our studies do indicate that it's the hidden, unintentional forms of bias that are most damaging to people of color. And that, like at the University of Missouri, where you have people being called racial epithets or behaviors that are going on, it actually is only the tip of the iceberg. The reason why I believe students of color, faculty of color, are reacting in such a major way is that they are experiencing a climate that is hostile, that is full of microaggressions. These hate incidents on campus are triggering off this discontent, pain, and feeling of being silenced.
But there are critics of your studies and the notion even of microaggression, which they say have morphed from 1970 when it was unintentional to now everything that happens, and that people are just being overly sensitive. They say if you coddle these students on campus, how does that prepare them to live in the real world?
You know, the problem is that people believe microaggressions are very similar to the everyday incivility and rudeness that individuals, white Americans, experience in their day-to-day lives. They are quite different. Microaggressions for people of color are constant, continual, and cumulative. They occur to people of color from the moment of birth to when they die. And as a result, any one microaggression in isolation may represent the feather that breaks the camel's back. And people who don't see the lived experience of people of color and the daily onslaught that they experience tend not to believe that it's a major event.
You know, there's another criticism, because this has been called, some of the things that people are called, now they say the N-word and other things like that, is hate speech, and that it's protected by the First Amendment. So isn't that okay, given that kind of reasoning?
I think that people who say that we are preventing individuals from free speech don't realize, ironically, that it is people of color that historically have not been able to express themselves openly or freely without punitive actions being directed at them. And so there has to be this balance, but at the same time an understanding that there are limits to free speech when it harms and hurts people.
Why do you think that students commit microaggressions, or adults for that matter?
You know, that's a good question, and I think it goes to the heart of the matter that none of us are immune from inheriting the racial biases of our forebears. We have, attitudes and biases that are delivered through microaggressions.
But when some of these microaggressions come out in the form of real hatred, is that solvable?
We can deal with that deliberately, but the subtle forms of microaggressions are hard to prove, hard to quantify in some way, and very difficult for us to take actions against because people oftentimes don't perceive it as harmful and significant. People oftentimes tell me that white Americans are the enemy. I say, no, white Americans aren't the enemy. White supremacy is. It's the social conditioning of the superiority of one group over another. And many white Americans are equally victimized because they have been socialized into a society that tends to imbue them with these images that they believe in, but it's no fault of their own. If you really reach white Americans, they can become valuable allies. One of the reasons why our research concentrates on the unintentional forms of microaggressions is very much what Maya Angelou said. It's the unintentional bias that does the greatest harm to people of color. And I oftentimes use the example that, when you look at the disparities and inequities we have in education, employment, and healthcare, it is not due to the overt racists or the white supremacists. It is due to the well-intentioned teachers who educate our children, employers who decide who to hire, who to retain, and who to promote. And it is those individuals who are unaware of their hidden biases that are having the major impact on our standard of living.
Well, Professor Sue, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you.
And you can find more about microaggressions.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sue. It is, it really is, it puts it together nicely and ties how subtle microaggressions are, but also some of the negative outcomes that we have in healthcare, in the workplace, in schools, in church, even in churches. No place is exempt, or no group is exempt from experiencing microaggressions. Very often, I would say, and these three little questions I think applies to so many individuals. It's like, did that really happen? Because sometimes you can't believe it happened. You're like, no, did I? Let me turn back and see. And then you get to the point where, should I respond or shouldn't I respond? What if I don't respond? And then how should you respond? And those are questions that as individuals we'll battle with. But I'm gonna ask you that after today, you begin to think about responding. Think about speaking up, think about of addressing it. Sometimes it's very challenging and it's hard to come up with the right way to do it, the right words. But what I often do a lot, I'll give you my little tip, what I use, when I'm kind of fumbling and I don't want to get all, you know, all angry or loud, I'll just say, something doesn't sit well with me right now. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm just having this kind of ouch, this kind of feeling. I'll circle back with you. So I kind of put it out there so individuals will recognize that whatever they said wasn't sitting right well, and I will come back later on. And, you know, by the time I make sure I get back to the individuals, and we'll have, at that time, we're both kind of calm and we can have a decent conversation. And if you guys haven't read this book, How to Have Difficult Conversations, is one of those older books that have been around for a long time. You should get it. It's one of the books that it doesn't fall under, I don't know, it's probably self-help, I don't know which category it comes in, but How to Have Difficult Conversations or How to Have Hard Conversations. It really helps you in framing things that you want to talk about that's very difficult to engage in. And that will help in clinical work, it helps with your children. It's one of the books I recommend to most everyone that people should read it. Next slide. So what's the impact of microaggression? And we only have a few minutes left. So we'll just go through these. Sometimes you choose not to confront. And then what happens when you don't confront it? You go away, you feel regret, you feel shame, you feel guilty. And if you choose to confront, you may also experience fear because you don't know if the persons will retaliate, especially how do you confront your supervisor, or how do you confront the president of the company, or how do you confront somebody who holds so many things in your hand? They have the hand, you have the blade, but there are ways to do it. And then you have to just learn on how to have the communication to make it effective. Next slide. What's the impact of microaggression? It hurts and it re-traumatizes people who already experience oppression from the larger world. It hurts. And I've seen where the feelings, it can accumulate. And I don't know if you have experienced where you have been accumulating all these feelings, and especially if it's coming from one person or one angle, and then, you know, it just busts open one. Somebody just says the one little thing, or that supervisor says the one little thing that just throws you off that day. And when you explode or when you say something, people normally say, but I've done this all the time. This is something that you've been used to. What's wrong with you today? And that is why it behoves you to address these things when it happens. Next slide. Next slide. So responding to microaggression, yeah, do not allow charge statements to be brewed over in silence. It's very challenging, but it happens to us so many times when we allow things to brew and to stew, and it brews and it stews. And that's why I keep saying it needs to be addressed, and you really need to address it. And that difficult conversations will give you some sense. I think there was an example that followed this statement. Yeah, this is an example. Kathy, can you read that, please? Example.
It says that with a clearly annoyed tone, a white student says to a professor, "This is Uni 104, not a course on diversity." So suggestion is model what you want the person to do by acknowledging the statement. I don't know. Okay. So an example of what you might say is, it sounds like you're making a distinction between diversity and Uni 104, that talking about diversity, equity, and belonging are not valid topics for this course. Is that what you are saying? And then a student may respond, no, that's not what I'm saying. And a good response would be possibly is, okay, please clarify what you're trying to say.
You see, if you think through that example, So the first thing, and just in any case, you have to acknowledge what people say. You got to acknowledge a statement, and then you can move on to having the conversation. Because if you don't acknowledge, we're waiting for acknowledgement of how we feel or whatever the statement that we have said. Next slide. We have 3 minutes. Responding to what can we do is lean into the tension, acknowledge necessity of having conversations, prepare individuals for transitions, entering, moving through, continuing, and exiting the conversation. To the next slide. You're gonna get these slides. So some of these you can go through on your own. What can we do? Yes, we need to express appreciation for someone who is bold enough to actually speak to whatever is going on. Sometimes we tend to dismiss that individual, and by dismissing that individual, you're encouraging, it's almost like you're validating the behavior of others. So you acknowledge it and you express appreciation. I appreciate your courage and commitment to your work by being willing to engage in these kinds of important conversations. It is common to walk away from them feeling unsettled, and as we are willing to practice this, we will get it better. I hope you all will feel free to bring these kinds of topics up again when situations arise. I think those 3 statements are things that we could probably keep in our back pockets to use. Can we, I know, and look, I have 2 minutes left. So I have like one question. Yeah, but that tool at the end, it's really, it's you can, when you print the slides off, I hope you have an opportunity to print. Can you get to it, Kat?
Yeah.
Lenore, you know, we don't have a ton of questions in the chat box for you yet. So if you want to go over that tool real quick, feel free to do that.
Okay, the tool just speaks, it gives some examples of microaggression, and it talks about, you know, what the third party intervention would be and how do you communicate. So if we look, I just do the first box that speaks to alien in one's land. These are some of the things that we just went through: ascription of intelligence and colorblindness. And a third party intervention could be, I'm just curious, what makes you ask that? You know, so somebody asks you, where are you from? Whatever it is. And you respond and you can say, oh, you know, I'm just so curious. What makes you ask that? And are you interested, you know, just find something that kind of throws people off. Neville and I, we were at we were doing a workshop, a conference. We do this kids conference, and one of our mentors, we got into a conversation, and I was very, very heated. And the other mentor comes up and say, so what's for lunch today? It was his way of turning the conversation and making us kind of, okay, guys, you're wasting time on this. But if you just, I'm curious, what's up? I heard you say that all Asians are good in math. What makes you believe that? And that's what we hear a lot. So what do you believe in? Can you elaborate when you say, you know, for color blindness? You could say, so what do you believe in? Can you elaborate? And the person may say, yes, I think we're all from the same human race. And you could go further and say, and what do you mean by that? You know, giving them some examples of how you see yourself as being different. And when it thinks about the communication, you can inquire, ask the speaker to elaborate. This will give you more information about where he or she's coming from, and may also help the speaker to become aware of what he or she's saying. And some key phrases you can use: say more about that. Can you elaborate? It sounds like you have a very, very strong opinion. Can you share that with me and tell me why? So this I'm sure it will be sent to you, because it's a part of the slide deck. And Kathy pulled together one more, if you guys have time, one more YouTube that is really good. I want to show that YouTube.
Do you speak African? Aren't you from the hood?
Wow. Can I have your hair
So your dad's the black one, right?
Why do you talk like a white girl? What do you mean you can't play basketball?
You speak Spanish, you're not black. Why are you such an angry black woman? Can you even comb your hair?
Definitely.
Is it true what they say about black guys? Hey, what sport do you play?
I thought you were just black.
Why do you act so black?
Hey, girlfriend.
What country in Africa are your parents from?
Call me Bobby. Oh my gosh, you're so pretty for a dark-skinned girl. Can I see your ID?
How's your black perspective? Fake. Oreo.
Swirl.
One drop.
White girl.
Homie.
Exotic. Sassy. Nappy.
Nigger.
Okay, guys, thank you so very much for joining Kathy and I in this presentation. And I'm hoping that you've gotten a lot out of it. Thank you. And please use the tool with your colleagues and your family and your friends in whatever setting that you are at. I know it will come up. It will be helpful.
Thanks so much, Lenora and Kathy. I'm just looking through the chat box real quick. We don't have anything quite yet, except people are asking about the PowerPoint. So that will be posted along with the recording on the NYAPRS website sometime next week when we get everything together.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Harvey.